I'm John Batchelor with my colleagues, Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, and Steve Moore of the Trump campaign and the Heritage Foundation. We'll have Larry Kudlow with us from the CNBC newsroom soon enough. We're looking at the numbers as they roll in, and the whole country looks close right now. In fact, if you want anxiety and you're a Republican or Democrat, just look at the front page of one of the major newspapers like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. You get plenty of anxiety, Steve. There is no way to know whether you're going to be in the executive office building or...
You just can't make this up. I mean, we know that we always knew, right, Mary, that this was going to come down to Florida and Ohio and Pennsylvania, North Carolina. And John, I mean, they're all within 1 or 2 percentage points. Right now, Trump, at the last that I looked at with, good part of the vote in, Trump had slight leads in Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina. If he wins those three, there is a path to victory.
The modifier the New York Times favors tonight is razor thin.
Well, it is razor thin. Yes. I'll give them that.
Yeah, the razors are something we older people use. I know the younger people, they don't like razors. They're all bearded, so beards have taken over. Razors, razor thin. Larry Kudlow of CNBC and from the newsroom has rejoined us. Larry, I believe he has. Larry, are you there? No,
he's on the air.
Yeah, he's working.
Yeah.
No, not yet. We'll get him back. We'll get.
You know what? What's interesting?
The reason I'm watching these numbers so carefully is that we have people outside the United States who've never been through a close election watching right now and listening to us. And America will stay up late for this, very late, and wait for both sides to acknowledge the victory of one of the
We may not have a victor tonight.
Right now,
Steve.
We may not.
Right now, we're asking,
because isn't it recounts within 1%?
We're asking Steve to leave the room if he keeps this up.
It's amazing. I'm so excited.
I want to talk about the Congress because the Congress is a check to a president or a way of augmenting a president. And the Republicans are much at risk in the Congress, especially in the Senate. We do have one race called earlier, Duckworth in Illinois, I believe was an easy call over Kirk in Illinois.
The Democrat in Illinois wins over the Republican.
But we do not have calls in several states that we're watching carefully. This would be Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, a first-termer, Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire, a first-termer, Pat Toomey, first-termer in Pennsylvania, and Roy Blunt, who is a veteran of the Republican House and then Senate, up against a young surprise candidate in Missouri. I'm identifying those 5 states because they remain at risk, whereas holding, his name is Young, I believe Young in Indiana, that holds a Republican seat. And Rubio holds his seat in Florida. I believe Chris Van Hollen holds a Democratic seat in Maryland. So we're looking at 5 because the Republican advantage, they will check me on this, is 54-46, right? That's the Republican advantage.
The Democrats need a net pickup of 4 or 5, depending on who wins the White House.
And so we watch it very carefully to see whether there is a swing, because that would be a very big help to a President Trump to have the Senate as well as the House.
I'm going to make a prediction to you. If Trump wins the presidency, I believe he will have a Republican Senate. By the way, one of the interesting Senate races was that Indiana race, because Evan Bayh was a very popular governor, and he was a popular senator. But what happened was Evan Bayh was out of office for, 4 or 6 years, and he became a Washington lobbyist. I like Evan Bayh, by the way. He's a friend of mine. But I think that really hurt him in this race. He wasn't a Hoosier. He became a Virginian.
He also...
Larry, are you there? Did we get you back? Oh, good. Fine.
Good. There we are.
Oh, fine.
The other thing to say very briefly about that race is that Evan Bayh decided not to defend his Obamacare vote and instead retired from the Senate. And so this is kind of,
Great point. There's Obamacare again.
There's Obamacare again, right? He paid for his Obamacare vote.
I want to go back to prosperity, Larry, with you, because you and Steve worked very hard early in this campaign cycle to make prosperity and growth the centerpiece of the Republican success. Do you, at this point, regard that as communicated to the American people effectively, Larry, from what we see tonight?
Well, no. I think there's a problem here. And the people who were suffering the most in the Rust Belt states, for example, and elsewhere. And this is the heart of Trump's, revolution. Okay, this was his movement. They believe they were hurt by immigrants. They believe they were hurt by trade. Their incomes have done very poorly. I mean, overall income has looked a little better in really the last couple of months. That's all. You're still way below where you were at the peak in 2007, and the real median income has hardly moved since 2000, which is 16 years. And a lot of people have suffered through this. So I think that Trump didn't really make the sale. Now, he did a lot better in the last couple of weeks. I will give him, plenty of credit for that. He got it out there. But he never really hammered it home in a repetition type way. The same for Obamacare. I liked what Trump was doing on Obamacare a lot, and I think he was scoring points. He closed the gap again in October. Every time he talked issues, he closed the gap. The one that I didn't like is what he was doing the last couple of days, which was moving back to a really hardline protectionist thought, the possibility of a 30% tariff on companies trying to that go overseas and come back with their imports. That's really not good, and Steve and I kind of lost that battle. But he did it. See, here's the thing, I don't understand this. Obviously, this is a political play, because he was, work in Michigan, work in Ohio, work in Pennsylvania, in some sense work in North Carolina, where there's a lot of immigrants and so forth. So I don't know whether this is a political play or a really serious thing. A lot of people say that his bark is going to be a lot better, a lot smaller than the actual bite when he gets in to be president, if he does. So, I want to see if this Hillary lead on the economy continues. I mean, these exit polls shift over the night. I want to see that, because if she holds that, it's just not good, and it really reflects a failure on the Trump campaign.
I agree with everything you just said, Larry. I would just make one additional point, and it was to what Mary just brought up. Mary, if Trump wins this election, and it's so close right now, Obamacare is going to turn out to be, I think, the millstone around the neck of the Democrats.
Well, it already has been the millstone. Right. If you look at the number of Republicans who are governors, or the number of state legislatures that Republicans dominate, or just the gains in the House in 2010 and 2012. But again, we can't make predictions now, because even if Trump did take Florida, that's not a guarantee that he wins the presidency.
We have something to discuss when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, which is Steve Ratner just tweeted that stock futures are plunging as the race is tighter than expected in one of those Bloomberg charts where something falls off a cliff. We'll talk about why. What is it about a Donald J. Trump presidency that frightens whoever runs those algorithms? I'm John Batchelor.